Luke chapter 20, we began last week talking about the parable of the vineyard. Chapter 20, verse 1 tells us that the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders of the people were there. And this parable begins there in verse 9. He's beginning to speak to the people. Verse 19, it sort of indicates that these chief priests and the scribes were still there listening to this parable. Parable of the vineyard, a man who planted a very nice vineyard. If you go to Matthew chapter 21, we went to Isaiah chapter 5 last week, where apparently Jesus knew what Isaiah had prophesied. Matthew chapter 21 there describes that same planting of that same vineyard much as it was in Isaiah chapter 5. Matthew 21, Mark chapter 12 has this same parable, but they describe it in a little more detail. But in Matthew 21, that landowner had planted this vineyard, built a wall around it, built the tower of the winepress, the whole thing, as was described in Isaiah chapter 5. He went to a lot of trouble, went to a lot of expense. But we know that he leased the vineyard out to some husbandmen, some people who are going to take care of it. He's gone back home into a far country, probably not coming back. And so they're going to pay him the rent out of the vineyard by what the vineyard produces. And of course, that would have been a pretty good deal for everybody. But it's time for the vineyard it's time for them to pay the rent. And so he sent a servant. Down in verse 10, but the people who are supposed to pay the rent, they were reluctant to turn loose of it. They didn't want to pay the rent. But this is a servant. They beat him and sent him away empty. Now notice, let's begin in verse 11. We'll read down through verse 16. And again, he sent another servant, and they beat him also and treated him shamefully, and they sent him away empty. And again he sent a third, and they wounded him also and threw him out. Then said the Lord of the vineyard, what shall I do? I will send my beloved son. It may be they will reverence him when they see him. When the husbandmen saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, this is the heir. Come, let's kill him, that the inheritance may be ours. So they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. What therefore shall the Lord of the vineyard do unto them? He shall come and destroy these husbandmen, and give the vineyard to others. And when they heard it, they said, God forbid. And so now in verse 11 there, we see that he sent another servant. This landowner, the owner of the property, maybe he's sort of confused. Maybe these people that he sent the servant to, maybe they thought he was an imposter. He wasn't sent by the Lord, the landowner. And so there was a misunderstanding, and so he sent another servant there, maybe with some credential, maybe something to identify himself as a representative of the landowner. But they treated him shamefully, it says. Maybe they treated him worse than they treated the first one. But he also went home empty-handed. And of course, the parallel of this parable is God continuously sending his prophets. Beginning way back in the Old Testament, God sent his prophets to the people. They treated them very badly. They stoned them, they killed them. God sent other prophets after that prophet had been rejected, and of course that's the parallel to this parable here. They were treated worse than criminals. God's prophets were. This landowner, when he sent his servants to collect the rent, they were treated worse than criminals. They were shamefully entreated. Notice 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 12. I've always wondered about this verse. Andy probably could quote it for us, but I can't, so I better go there. 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 12. All of us who will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. And of course we understand that about the people that were sent. These prophets that were sent, the apostles that were sent, the teachers and the preachers that were sent back during that time suffered persecution. They were shamefully entreated. They were killed. And sometimes I wonder about me, myself. I don't know if I've ever suffered persecution. Now, as a preacher's wife, y'all probably were. You and your husband persecuted or not treated very well at times. I understand. And that at the hands of other Christians. And sometimes that's the problem. I don't know that I've ever been mistreated from someone outside the church. Not that I know of, and maybe that's my persecution, but if that's it, I'm thankful for it. It wasn't that bad. But sometimes I do wonder about myself, and if I'm not suffering persecution, maybe I'm not living godly in Christ Jesus, Andy. Is that
I don't think that's the point in our society today, because we're a little bit more, our society is more tolerant of religious differences.
Yes, and that's true.
And for religious, about the only persecution you will suffer from outside the body is a little bad mouthing. They may talk about you, or call you an Arab, conservative, or
and that's my
he
persecution.
sticks to himself, or Ricky's over on the hill, on Ricky Hill, he does his own thing.
And I know everything.
Yeah, but
can't tell him anything.
But that's the worst persecution. For those from the end of the congregation, I can't say that.
Yep. Well, okay. But yeah, maybe so, and yeah, we are more tolerant. I've said before, I'm so thankful that we don't live under the old law, and I really am. We've got it much better today. I'm thankful that I didn't live back during the time of Christ, because it was pretty rough. And for Christians in the early church, it was rough, bad rough. Andy, go ahead.
I don't want to get too far off the class in modern times, but the persecution today that it was on the news this morning at 6 when I turned the news on, about the Palestinians in America and the American Jews and the rights in the bigger cities and all that. That's against one religious sect, but it's not saying it could come against Christians in the coming foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. It could.
So I mean, persecution is something we have to deal with and be prepared for.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be persecuted, but it might be good for me. I don't want to. I've got it made, and I know it, and I just enjoy a good life here. I was asked yesterday, and I won't say who, but anyway, is the Lord's hand in what's going on in the Middle East today? Is the Lord's hand in it? Is the Lord's hand in everything?
The Lord's hand is in everything, but He is not involved in the direct decisions of the Middle East.
Okay, and that's exactly right. Is the Lord's hand with the nation of Israel today? Because He's God's chosen people.
No more than He is any other nation.
Okay. You may want to bring a lesson on that. There's a lot of confusion in the world today. A lot of people believe that
that's a holy war.
It's a holy war, and Israel will win, and they probably will. But that's because of the Lord. That's God's chosen people today. And I've heard this at work. If we don't stick with Israel, we're going against the Lord. We got to.
I heard that yesterday.
Yeah.
There was a religious man on television this morning saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And that's not true, but people, they're not going to accept that, and we may get some flack from that, Linda.
So God doesn't deal with the Middle East. He just doesn't do anything. He stays out of it.
I think the Lord's hand is in everything that goes on.
So that's what I thought.
And the Lord's will be brought about somehow through whatever's going to happen over there.
Okay.
But is the Lord's hand directly with the nation of Israel right now, this minute, and He's going to bless them in their battle, and they're just going to overcome because they're God's chosen people? No, I don't believe that. I don't believe the nation of Israel today is God's chosen people.
His hand is in it, and if Israel overcomes, it will be God's will, but it won't be because they're God's chosen people.
Right.
It'll be for some other purpose.
Right.
I think it's,
That's better than what I tried to say. Yeah. But there's a lot of folks today worked up about that issue that we abandoned Israel. I'm not in favor of abandoning Israel, but I'm not tied to them because it's God's chosen people. No, I don't believe that at all. But I think that possibly some in the church do. And if you wanted to bring a lesson about that, it might be helpful. But anyway, that's up to you. But it didn't know, and I don't know how I got off on that. But anyway.
You're right now, you're looking at some of God's chosen people right now.
Yes.
He don't care what goes on over there.
No, not.
No, He cares what's going on in Vernon Parish.
No.
But He cares for all of us.
But He cares for all of us.
So don't write God's providence care out, because God's providence care is in it all.
No. Yeah. And I feel for all those folks over there on both sides. There's some horrible things going on both sides. Bad mistakes being made by them, both sides. So we'll see how it turns out. But as far as me laying awake at night and worrying about it.
I didn't mean to get you off the class.
No, it's okay. I wanted to put that in anyway, but I forgot. Do what?
Jesus died for all people everywhere.
That's right.
I don't care where they are.
Who is a chosen generation today, a royal priesthood?
Right, we are.
Yes. Yes. Edgar.
I thought that reminded me of a song, Does Jesus Care? And
Mhm.
1 Peter 5:7, cast all your care upon him, for he careth for you. The song just come up to my mind.
Yeah, and I think he cares for both sides over there today, right now in the Middle East. He cares for all of them, but he's not favoring one over the other. No. No. But we may get some flack from that, Andy. You'll have to get to that. Anyone have any comment? Going back to Luke chapter 20. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to get off over that like that. But notice verse 12. Again, he sent a third. I thought I heard somebody. Again, he sent a third, and they wounded him also, and they cast him out. Last week we went to 2 Chronicles chapter 36 and verse 16. We were told that God's prophets that were sent by God were badly mistreated. They were cast out, they were stoned, they were killed. It said that the wrath of God against those people got so great till there was no remedy. There was nothing left for the Lord to do. And he finally sent his only begotten Son. And that's what's going to happen here in this parable. And that's still not going to help the situation with these vineyard keepers there. But notice Mark chapter 12. Well, he sent another servant. Mark chapter 12. This is Mark's version of what we just read there in Luke chapter 20. Mark chapter 12, beginning in verse 3. They caught him. This is the servant that was sent. They beat him and sent him away empty. Verse 4, and again he sent them another servant, and at him they cast stones, wounded him in the head. Can you imagine this? Hit him in the head with a rock. How big is the rock, Linda? Big as my fist? I guess I could throw one that big, Wounded him in the head and sent him away shamefully handled. Throwed stones at him so much that they sent him back with a head wound. Would he have a concussion? Is he sort of addled and never was the same again? How do you think the landlord felt, when that servant came back? What are those people over there doing? All he wanted was for them to pay the rent. Cast stones at him, wounded him in the head. These folks were determined to do what they wanted to do, no matter what. Andy, go ahead.
To answer your question, anger would be the first human emotion. If my servant came back with head injury, I'd be angry.
Yeah. But the Lord's patient. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I'd be sort of not happy with that. But again, the Lord's wrath back in 2 Chronicles chapter 36, his wrath was so great that there was no remedy. There was nothing else he could do. He's going to destroy. This is going to be the vineyard that's going to be destroyed. These people are going to be destroyed. Notice, if you would, when we get there, the vineyard's not going to be destroyed. The people who's taking care of the vineyard is going to be destroyed. The vineyard's going to be given to someone else. And again, that's where we get away from God, the Jews being God's chosen people. The vineyard has been given now to another people, and that, of course, is part of the parable here. But this guy, this landowner, he got to be frustrated with these folks, Edgar.
I just noticed here, Luke 20, where you're at, doesn't say what it does over here in Mark 12. It just said it killed one. It killed, but that's when it killed. Over here in Mark, it said it killed many others and killed. They beat many others and killed many others.
Yes.
He wasn't the only one that they killed.
Yes. It seems to be a discrepancy. I think it was Matthew 21 said that he sent servants, plural, maybe at a time. Maybe 2 went or 3 went. I'm not sure. And some of those that he stoned, some they killed, some they sent home wounded, and all those types of things. But as I said, Matthew 21 and Mark chapter 12 are a little more detailed than Luke is, but it's basically the same parable, the same story here.
You know, to explain that idea of servant or servants being plural, under the Old Testament, there was multi prophets prophesied at the same time.
That's true.
So therefore, if you look at the position as these servants being the prophets, there was times when there was more than one servant. There was more than one prophet.
Yes.
And there was times when there was only one.
Yes. That's
I
true.
think that, that's not a
Good
good
point.
discrepancy there.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah. But again, we're looking at basically the same illustration, the same parable here in all three accounts there. But notice verse 13. You know, what's going to be the remedy to this? Back in Luke chapter 20, verse 13. Then said the Lord of the vineyard, what shall I do? Well, I'll send my beloved son. It may be that they will reverence him when they see him. No need sending another servant. You know, I think the idea was that we'll beat all these servants and keep on sending them back, or maybe they didn't make it back. We killed one or two of them, and he'll quit sending. The old man ain't coming. You know, he lives in a far country. He ain't coming back. We could kill these servants, and we're going to see even this son. We can kill him, and that's the end of the story right there. You know, we can have it just like we got it. But I'll send my son. My son will go. Mark chapter 12 and verse 6 tells us that this is his only son. Mark 12 verse 6, this is his only son. It's his beloved son. They'll listen to him. They're not going to mistreat my son. You know, that they respected this landowner. He went to a lot of trouble to plant this vineyard. Matthew 21 verse 33 tells us all about what he did, similar to Isaiah chapter 5. But I think they appreciated the landowner, and he's thinking, well, they'll respect my son when I send my son. They're not going to treat him like they treated these other servants. He's a well-beloved son. What's a beloved son? Well loved. Well loved. We all love our son.
How much you love Brian?
Yes. We all love our son. You don't love Brian like the way I love Brian. I don't love Franklin like you love Franklin, but at any rate, we love our son. This is the only son of this fellow here. Well, his well-loved son. He's deserving in this love from his father, but you know, by the way his manner is, by the way he lived his life, he loves his son, and these people there in that vineyard, when my son gets there and they get familiar with him, they'll love him too. They'll respect him too, Edgar.
You asked him, you said that you don't love Brian like I love, and you don't love Franklin like I love, but if God loved his son like we love him, see what it did for him.
That's a good question.
Stuck him on the cross.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. My answer to that is, I hope so. That's not an affirm yes. I hope so. You know?
This well beloved, I had a note when I studied this. It says like father's love.
Do what now?
Father's love.
The father's love, yeah, for their son. And your only son, you got one son, I've got one son, your only son. You won't lose your only son. No. But answer to Edgar's question, do I love the Lord? Do I love Jesus, the Son of God, just like God the Father loved his son? I hope so, Edgar. That's the best that I can do. I hope so. Can we answer that in the affirmative? That'd be hard to do. Do I love Jesus as much as God the Father loved Christ? No, we can't. But I certainly hope so. That I at least love him and respect him, and I want to do what I can to serve him because of the way that he's blessed me and he's helped me. He's put me in this vineyard too. You know, I'm in the vineyard. We're all in the vineyard. But notice now, let's go back to Luke chapter 20. Notice verse 14. He's going to send the son, and when the husbandmen saw him, the son, they reasoned among themselves, saying, you know, look, this is the heir. Let's kill him, and the inheritance, this property, can be ours. They saw him coming. They must have saw him coming. And they've got their heads together. Yonder he come. Maybe he was there when they leased the vineyard, when they rented the thing. They recognize him, you know, and they get their heads together and they decided what we need to do before he gets here to ask for the rent. We know what he's coming for. We know that's the only son. That's the only one that's going to inherit this property. The old man ain't coming. This is the one that's going to inherit this property that we have possession of right now. If we can get rid of him, we can just keep it. We don't have to pay any rent. Let's get rid of the heir, the only heir to the property, get rid of him. We won't be bothered with any of them anymore. We can keep what we have in our possession right now. And we're not going to be bothered with any more servants anymore. These sons coming, or the servants coming to collect the rent. You know, they're the ones in charge of the vineyard, just like the scribes and the Pharisees and the chief priests and the elders were in charge of the old law, to teach the old law back at that time. And you know, and I've mentioned several times, we're down in verse 19, these folks think that they're talking about, he's talking about them. Well, he was talking about them. They perceive that for sure. You know, Jesus' interest was in the souls of the people. The interest of the chief priests and the scribes and the Pharisees was maintaining their place in life. In John chapter 12 and verse 19, you know, they decided the whole world's going after this guy. We need to do something with him because the whole world is following, listening to him now. John chapter, where's it at now? Lost my place here. Come on now. John chapter 11, verse 48. They conclude, you know, if we don't do something, we're going to lose our place. We're going to lose our place in life, our authority, our jobs, our cushy position that we have, cushy life that we enjoy. We're going to lose our place if we don't do something with this guy. Jesus was interested in the souls of people. These folks just wanted to preserve what they had. Kyle?
I know it's a parable. Do you think the Pharisees and Sadducees actually knew that Jesus, when he was here, was actually God's son? I know there's some verses that kind of insinuate that they did.
Yeah, some of them did, and I think so.
And they went after him anyway.
Yeah.
Which is even worse. It's not like they were ignorant of who he was.
No.
They actually knew who he was. And even then, they were still going after him.
Yeah, well, you know, this parable says these people who had leased the property, they knew who the son was.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because he's saying in the parable they knew.
Well, that's true. That's a good
point.
point.
They reasoned within themselves. Hey, here's the son. Let's kill him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that? I mean,
so we can keep what we got.
That's right.
Keep it just like it is. We like it just like it is. That's a good point. Yeah, they knew. And they knew who Jesus was. You know, they saw the wonderful works he was doing in the temple, and they're asking, well, who gave you this authority? Forget about the wonderful works.
They even told people about miracles that had happened, not to spread the word.
Yeah.
Keep silent about it.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, they knew. They knew the son that was coming from the vineyard. They knew that Jesus who came was God's son. So let's just kill him, and we can keep what we have. It's ours. We can keep what we're doing in our good, cushy lives now. Self-preservation. Notice verse 15. This is the son. So they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. Now let's stop. Why did they cast him out of the vineyard? Because there's some significance to that. What? And do you know? Was Jesus crucified in the city of limits of Jerusalem?
They had to take him outside the Golgotha and crucify him because he could not be put to death inside the city.
Okay. He was crucified outside the gate. That's the Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 12. He died outside the gate. Why? No, notice Leviticus chapter 4. This is part of the old law, and I think that's just part of the parable here, so these folks could understand the parable. They believed in the old law, or at least claimed they did. Leviticus chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. This is the sacrifice for the atonement of sins. Leviticus chapter 4, verse 11, the skin of the bullock and all his flesh with his head, his legs and his entrails and his dung, Even the whole bullock shall be carried forth without the camp unto a clean place, where the ashes are poured out, and burn him on the wood with fire, where the ashes are poured out shall he be burned. The sin atonement was done outside the camp. You know, they didn't live in this was Israel wandering for 40 years. They just had camps. They didn't kill this one inside the camp. They went outside the camp. Obviously, they had a place where they dumped their ashes every day to get rid of that for whatever reason. That's where they took this bullock that was to be offered for the sin of atonement. Jesus died on the cross outside the gates of the city of Jerusalem in order that his sacrifice might be a sacrifice for our sins. Does that have anything to do with this guy that was cast out of the vineyard?
Didn't they put the scapegoat outside the gate?
Yes, and release the scapegoat, yeah. For some reason it couldn't be done inside the city limits of Jerusalem when Jesus was crucified, outside the camp there, under the old law there. They cast this guy out of the vineyard. You just kill him in the vineyard. Maybe they didn't want the mess in the vineyard. Maybe it didn't have anything to do with the old law, but I think possibly it did. So these folks could get the point of this. Jesus died so that he might sanctify the sins of the people. So his blood on the cross could make an atonement for the sins of the people. But now, they killed the son, cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. What therefore shall the Lord of the vineyard do to him now? What can he do now? He's still out, far off in this other country. What's he going to do now? He sent servants. God sent his prophets. They killed them. This landowner sent his son. God sent his son. They killed both of them. What can he or what will he do now? Now, notice Micah chapter 6. We noticed this last week. Micah chapter 6 and verse 3, he pleads with the nation of Israel. Micah chapter 6 and verse 3, he says, "Oh, my people," this is God's chosen people, "what have I done to you?" Now, can you hear the landowner asking these renters? I set you up pretty good. Well, what have I done to you, and wherein have I wearied you? Testify against me. Tell me what I've done to you. After I've done all this for you, what did I do that was wrong? You've done nothing wrong. Sir?
And I don't know if it's that verse, but a few verses down, he said that he will come and destroy these wicked people.
Yes. Where's that at? I read that last week. But yeah, you're right. I can't find it there. But anyway, he's gonna come and destroy these wicked people. He's gonna destroy the nation of Israel. He's gonna destroy these wicked people there that's rented out his vineyard. But he's asking the question there now. What can I do? Notice the next verse, and we'll tie these both together. Verse 16, he shall come, and he's going to destroy these husbandmen. He's going to give this vineyard to some other folks. Notice, now, let's go to Matthew chapter 21. Matthew chapter 21, a little discrepancy here. Matthew chapter 21, well, I didn't finish reading. Verse 16, in Luke chapter 20, he shall come and destroy these husbands and shall give the vineyard to others. And when they heard it, the people heard it, they said, God forbid. Well, I hope that don't happen. God forbid that's going to happen. God forbid. That's what the people said. Now, notice Matthew chapter 21 now, verse 40 and 41. When the Lord therefore of the vineyard comes, what will he do to these husbandmen? Notice what the people are going to say here. They said unto him, well, he's going to miserably destroy those wicked men, and he's going to let out his vineyard to other husbandmen, and which shall render or pay the fruits of their seasons. Luke chapter 20 says the people said, God forbid that ever happens. Matthew chapter 21, people said, well, he's going to come and miserably destroy those wicked men. Which one is it? Is there a discrepancy here? No, I agree, Andy. No, there's no discrepancy here. But Matthew says this, that's what the people said, you know, and Luke says, the people said, well, you know, I hope that don't happen. God forbid that will happen. You're going to miserably destroy those people and give the vineyard to somebody else. Well, that's reasonable. That's what I would have done. But God forbid that would happen, Linda. So what's the difference? And now, let's stay in Matthew chapter 21 here just a minute. Notice they said that this owner can miserably destroy those wicked people. He's going to destroy them. I ain't part of it. Edgar. It's always their fault. You know, I can see somebody else is fault. You know, if I'd have been part of the vineyard people there that's going to have to pay the rent, I probably didn't want to pay it either. I've been part of them, but it's not me. So he's going to destroy them. Well, what do you think he should do? He needs to punish them. Of course, that's what I would have said too. You know, they easily saw the sin of these other people. They were right. That's what should have happened. Miserably destroy them today when he comes. Now let's go back to Luke chapter 20. Try to reconcile this. Got two different things here. He needs to come and do this to them, and now in Luke chapter 20 and verse 16, God forbid that will happen. Jesus said that's what he's going to do. He's going to destroy the vineyard, destroy these husbands, and give the vineyard to someone else. No, notice first of all, he's coming. The old man, you know, he ain't coming back. Well, he is coming back. He's done all that he can do for them, even to the point of sending his own son, and they killed him. So he's going to have to come back and do this himself. He's going to punish these husbandmen. He's not going to destroy the vineyard. He's going to give the vineyard to someone else, and of course that's going to be from taking it from the God's chosen people, the Jews at that time, and giving it to the Gentile people who will appreciate what God has done for them. And I'm thankful for that, because that includes me and us today. Give it to someone else. But the people's answer back there, you know, was reasonable. Yeah, go ahead and destroy it, give it to someone else. But they said in verse 16, God forbid. Now, what's the difference? Why is there a discrepancy? Notice, if you would, jump down again to verse 19. These same people, these chief priests, the scribes and the elders of the people, they're listening to all this. And the chief priests and the scribes, the same hour sought to lay hands on him, and they feared the people. But notice that they perceived that he had spoken this parable against them. They're thinking that he's talking about me, us. I don't want that to happen to me, God forbid.
Let it not be so.
Let it not be so.
Let it not be so.
Andy, I think he's talking to me. Don't let that happen to me.
This idea of God forbid right here, let it not be so.
Right.
Matthew's account is saying, look, let it not be so.
Yeah. Depends on whose foot the shoe is, huh? You know, I'm wearing the shoe that I think he's talking about me, and he's going to destroy me.
No, I don't want it.
No, I don't want that. God forbid. Don't let that. I hope not. Yeah, I think that's the difference there. We got two different people here. Yeah, I understand what those mean people did, and they need to be punished. But I think he's talking about me. I'm the mean person, and I hope that don't happen. And you know, and I don't blame them. That's where I would have been also. You know, some said that they need to be punished, and some are saying, well, I hope not. You know, some saw the sin of others, and others thought, well, he's talking about me. You know, years ago I was teaching the class, and a fellow here, he's a member of the church, not here now. He came to me one time, and he told me that my class made him uncomfortable. And he didn't come to church to be made uncomfortable. That's literally what he said. And I'm just amazed. Was it me that made him uncomfortable? I don't think. We're just teaching this, just like what we're doing.
My prayer is whether it's you or me or that pulpit, wherever it's at, I'm not making you feel uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable, do something about it.
Maybe he was looking at himself,
Yeah.
which is good. But Linda, it was my fault. I'm always amazed at people. I'm
Shoot
just
the messenger,
amazed.
not receive the message.
Sir?
Shoot the messenger, not to receive the message.
Hell yeah. It is easier to blame somebody else, though. I mean, that's silly. That's silly. He actually told me that. And he's at home now, not able to even get out. Well, I don't know, what do you do?
Was he ignorant or something?
That goes back to that point we was talking about the other two weeks ago. To get involved with somebody that's don't have a reasonable conversation, you're wasting your time. You know, I've got to defend what I'm trying to teach here. No, I didn't write this. No, I didn't write it. I'm just trying to teach it. Trying to get us to think, to look at ourselves. I need to look at me. And you look at you, and if it's you fits, then let's try to do something about that. But he didn't come to church to be uncomfortable. You know, is that where the people have the itching ears or something? And let's don't talk about that. Let's talk about something else. And of course, you can't do that. You can't do that. Notice the next verse here, verse 17. Where am I? Yeah, I'm back here. I've often wondered what 17 and 18 had to do with this parable. I said the other night and Wednesday night, as the teacher, you learn a whole lot more because you really got to dig for it. You got to look at it really. And I have, of course, and maybe I figured this out. What does this have to do with that parable? Verse 17 and 18. And he beheld him and said, what is this then that is written? Now we're talking about this vineyard and the people are going to be destroyed. What is this then that is written? The stone which the builders rejected, the same has become the head of the corner. Whosoever shall fall upon the stone shall be broken, but upon whomsoever shall fall, it will grind him to powder. What does that have to do with this parable? He's still talking to the same people, I think. What is that, First of all, verse 17, and he beheld them. Well, so when some of them heard it, they said, God forbid. He looked at them and said, well, then what is this then that is written? What does this mean? The stone which the builders rejected, the same stone has become the head of the corner. Is this a puzzle, a riddle? No, of course. We know what, we know what the stone is. Who's the stone, or what's the stone? Christ is the stone. Years ago, and you don't see this much anymore. Some of the older buildings that were built, they had what they called a cornerstone. What it was, just a piece of stone there that says when it was built and, who had ever donated it or whatever. That was the cornerstone. It's on a lot of these old.
It was very important when they built an old building like that to make a cornerstone, for everything worked off of it.
Right.
It says Christ is our stone today. We work off of him.
Right. And that's true. That's a good point. I never thought about that angle of it. Yeah, but everything was measured, built off of that cornerstone. Yeah. But they don't do cornerstones anymore on these new buildings for whatever reason. That's fine. They don't waste the money on that. But anyway. But what does this mean? Jesus is asking the stone which the builders rejected, the same has become the head of the corner. The builders of this building, they're looking at all these stones that they've got, and they picked up this particular stone, and it's not what was really needed. It's not going to fit. It's got a blemish on it. It's not perfectly square. Sir?
I was going to say it was prophesied back, I think, in Psalms 118, I think, it talked about the cornerstone.
You're right.
And then in 1 Peter 2 and 4 and 7, it was, Peter made mention of that it was finally come to pass.
Okay.
It was prophesied that it was come to pass.
Yes. I wish I had your memory. I really do. First Peter chapter 2, verse 4. That's what Burnell just referred to. He also referred to Psalms 118 and verse 2. That's what was mentioned with the cornerstone in Psalms 118, verse 22 rather. But notice for 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. Is that it? Yeah. To whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious. Who chose the real cornerstone? The stone that we're looking at, God did. The stone that they're looking at is this guy out of Nazareth. Nazareth of Galilee. Can anything come out good out of Nazareth? He's a poor guy, son of a carpenter. Mom and Daddy weren't even married when he was born, and he's going to be the cornerstone. No, he ain't the cornerstone. But he was rejected of men, but he was chosen of God. And I think that, of course, is what was the key here. Again, I'm not sure why it was placed in this parable, other than that these folks were going to reject him and did reject him. But you know what? The stone that was rejected became the cornerstone because it was suitable. It was the one that was needed. It was displayed in a prominent place. And he's asking them, what's the meaning of this? The rejected stone was going to be ended up selected as the cornerstone because you folks are going to reject me, but I'm going to end up being the cornerstone anyway. Anyone have any comment?
Yeah, verse 8, explain it.
Go ahead.
I want to say something.
Okay.
Oh, in the Bible there it says he did not pay his rent.
Yes.
The word rent. As we know that today, we call it that sharecroppers.
Okay.
I remember people used to sharecrop back in the 40s. They didn't own no land, but they'd come to somebody that had a property, and they'd say, if you make 2 bales of cotton, you'll get a third of it. That was sharecropping.
Right.
They didn't buy no nothing. They just sharecropped and worked off of what the owner owned to help them survive their daily lives.
Right.
So the word sharecropper comes from the word rent.
Okay. Okay. And that's true. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that's the way people used to work. Andy?
Verse 18, Ricky.
18 of where?
Luke 20.
Luke 20, verse 18. Whosoever shall fall upon the stone shall be broken.
How were they broken?
Whosoever shall fall upon that stone shall be broken. The nation of Israel is going to be completely destroyed. And the nation of Israel, you'll get some bad comments, this nation of Israel doesn't exist anymore. We've got a nation of Israel. It claims to be God's chosen people, but of course they're not. Edgar?
Surveyors, they go by cornerstones today. I mean, they may have to go half a mile or a mile down in the woods to find it.
That's true.
There's little
Yeah.
concrete markers with brass tabs.
That's true.
It's a cornerstone for them.
Okay. Okay. That would be a better illustration than what I've been trying to use, the cornerstone of the building, but anyway. Yeah, that's true. Anyone else? Before I forget, Pat and I are going to be gone the first Wednesday and the first Sunday of next November. Told Andy, I think, Sunday night, but first Wednesday and the first Sunday. We'll be here, Lord willing, next Sunday, but we'll be gone the following Sunday. So someone will want to fill in for that Sunday. Thank you for your help this morning. I've enjoyed this class.